The historical phrase refers to axes and hatchets, simple cutting tools, axes. Hatchets, knives used for chopping wood or shaping material. Knife, figuratively. It points to the idea that when conditions mature or a situation becomes dense with possibility, the appropriate tools or actions naturally arrive. Readiness meets opportunity. When the tools arrive. Eli lived on the fourth floor of a narrow building that looked out over a strip of city that still remembered trees. Between the cafe with the late-night jazz and the co-op grocery stood a strip of empty lots where volunteer gardeners coaxed life out of clay and concrete. Every spring the lot burst with plans. Every winter the plans shrank to a handful of notes in a drawer. Eli liked to say the city taught patience the hard way. He was not a carpenter. He worked in a small tech studio, shipping updates at midnight, arguing about APIs by day. API. But on Saturdays he helped at the lot, turning compost, measuring raised beds, teaching a teenager how to start a small fire for a grill without burning the tomato seedlings. The work was honest and unglamorous, and it showed him a different cadence of time than his inbox. At first, the lot was a scatter of seedlings and good intentions. There were moments when the community would convene with grant forms and proclamations, and the lot would answer with stubborn weeds. People came and left. Tools were borrowed and sometimes forgotten. When a neighbor proposed planting fruit trees, most listeners smiled and said, "Not now." Trees, everyone knew, asked for patience like a lover does a long, steady attention. Eli watched as one bed reached for the sun and another failed and was replanted. Eli. He learned to expect small completions, a successful transplant, a week without slug damage, a dialogue that didn't end in offhand frustration. These small completions accumulated, like stitches closing a seam. People began to trust the work and each other. A carpenter offered to help build benches. A young designer printed tiny laminated labels for the herbs. An elderly woman who used to garden as a child lent a battered hatchet from her shed, nothing ornate. Just a tool with a worn handle and a history of making things smaller so new things could grow. There was no trumpet announcing that the time had come. Instead, actions arrived as quietly as commuters on a platform, a volunteer with a trailer, a city crew offering spare soil, a neighbor who knew a supplier willing to donate seedlings. The lot ripened not because one person willed it, but because a series of small preparations reached a threshold. The work had been done, not grandly, but persistently, and the right implements, the right people, the right energy appeared. Eli realized the same truth applied to his code and his friendships. He had been pushing features into a product that never felt finished because something else in the team was always shifting. He began to treat his work like the lot, small acts, repeated carefully, rather than frantic leaps. He documented decisions. He fixed edge cases. He made the simple effort of thanking someone after a review. Over months, those tiny acts became a reputation for reliability. When a difficult integration finally needed a lead, the team didn't look for a miracle. They turned to Eli. It wasn't that he had become suddenly brilliant overnight. It was that the groundwork had been put in, and by then the right opportunity fit the preparedness he had quietly built. The hatchet from the elderly woman sat in a plastic bucket with the other tools. No one romanticized it. It was used to trim roots that threatened to rupture a raised bed, then cleaned and set down. But there was a lesson in its $15 worth and worn edge. Tools matter. But only when someone knows how to use them and when the thing being worked on is ready. An axe dropped into a sapling will wreck a plan. A handsaw used patiently can coax form from stubborn grain. Months later, the lot produced a small, honest harvest. Not enough to feed a burro, but enough for the co-op to buy local produce under a sign that read, "From neighbors, for neighbors." The volunteers celebrated with a potluck where someone played a cracked ukulele. People who had once passed the lot without a glance lingered to ask about tomatoes and irrigation. A teenager who had wanted to be an architect in the beginning now helped design a compost system. She had discovered that designing meant caring for how things grow. Eli walked home that night with a small basket of basil and a feeling that had nothing to do with triumph and everything to do with steadiness. The lot would need work tomorrow. The bench needed another coat of paint. The trees would ask for pruning in the spring. But the lot had taught him a kind of faith in sequence, that if you tend the soil and keep your hands ready, if you build habits and relationships with as much care as you build structures, the instruments you need will arrive, sometimes as people, sometimes as simple tools, and when they do, you will be able to use them. When he pulled his keys from his pocket, he thought about how easy it is to wait for a sign and how much harder it is to do the unexciting labor that creates conditions for signs to exist. Opportunity, he had come to believe, does not usually thunder down from the sky. It grows in the narrow spaces where people turn up repeatedly and keep working. The hatchet and the saw did not make the trees. The careful tending did. Tools bring swiftness, but readiness brings purpose. Eli placed the basket on his windowsill and watched the city lights blink like small, distant stars. He felt, in a quiet way, that he and the lot were part of the same slow becoming. He did not know what projects tomorrow would demand, but he knew the simple rule now: plant the steady work. And when the time comes, the tools and the people who know how to use them will be there, ripen to become fully developed or ready for action or use. The proposal ripened after months of quiet research, and the team finally approved it. Cultivate, to prepare and improve land for growing plants. Also to foster growth or development of a quality or relationship. She cultivated a habit of answering emails at the same hour every day. Attune, to bring into harmony or alignment. To make receptive or aware. He attuned himself to the team's pace so he could support them effectively. Readiness, the state of being prepared to do something. Her readiness to help made her the obvious choice to lead the project. Steward, to manage or care for something responsibly over time. They steward the community garden together. Sharing tools and knowledge. Implement, a tool or instrument. Also a verb meaning to put a plan or decision into effect. The city implemented the new recycling program after several pilot tests. Fruition, the realization or fulfillment of a plan or project. After years of small steps, the community center reached fruition and opened its doors. Craft, skill in making things by hand or skillful creation in any field. He improved his craft by practicing a little every day.